The night was sweltering, typical of our South Pacific Islands' tropical heat. I lay in bed, the ceiling fan lazily stirring the warm air. The rhythmic crash of waves against the shore provided a soothing backdrop, yet tonight it felt oppressive rather than calming. My mind churned with thoughts, unable to quiet itself despite my efforts to sleep. Around midnight, I heard the soft chime of a notification. Initially, I thought it was my phone, but it remained silent on the nightstand. Instead, I noticed the glow of Lena's phone illuminating her side of the bed. She was sound asleep, her body curled up away from me, her breathing steady and deep. With a pang of curiosity and an uneasy feeling in my stomach, I reached over carefully, trying not to disturb her. Lena's phone was warm from her touch, and I could feel a faint vibration as I picked it up. The screen lit up, revealing a message that made my heart race. "Thanks for tonight. Hope we can do it again soon. Roy." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Roy. I knew him. He was one of Lena's colleagues, a charming guy who was often the center of attention at work functions. The message was clear, but it was the familiarity and intimacy of it that struck me the hardest. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Lena and I had been married for over a decade, and while there had been ups and downs, we had always managed to work through them. But this was something entirely different. My fingers trembled as I reread the message, the weight of betrayal sinking in. The words were straightforward, but they left me with 1,000 questions. What exactly had happened tonight? Why was Lena hiding it from me? And why was Roy involved? I tried to steady my breathing, carefully putting the phone back where I found it. Lena stirred slightly but didn't wake. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through scenarios, each more disturbing than the last. The quiet of the night was suddenly filled with the loud clamor of my thoughts. My immediate instinct was to confront Lena, to demand answers right then and there. But a gnawing feeling told me to wait, to gather more information before making any accusations. I needed to be sure. The possibility of misunderstanding or jumping to conclusions was too risky. If this was as serious as it seemed, I needed concrete proof. As the hours ticked by, my mind churned with a plan. I couldn't shake the image of the message from my mind. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. And if Lena was indeed unfaithful, I needed to find out everything I could before I decided on my next move. I was about to embark on a path I'd never imagined, one that would test the boundaries of my patience and my heart. The following days were suffocatingly normal, a sharp contrast to the turmoil I felt inside. Lena's behavior had shifted subtly, but it was enough to catch my attention. Her late nights at work became more frequent, and she seemed increasingly distant. Conversations that once flowed naturally now felt forced. Strained. I tried to act normal, to maintain the routine we'd established over the years. But every time Lena's phone chimed or her work schedule changed, my heart would skip a beat. Her excuses seemed flimsy, and her detachment became more pronounced. I found myself questioning every little thing she did, searching for any sign that might confirm my fears. One evening, I decided to follow her. Lena had told me she had a late meeting with her team. I watched her leave our house, dressed in work attire that seemed a bit too formal for a typical office meeting. The anxious energy in me propelled me to follow her discreetly. She drove to a secluded area on the edge of the island, a picturesque spot where the lush greenery met the sandy shore. From my hidden vantage point, I saw Lena's car parked beside another vehicle I recognized as Roy's. My heart sank. This was no ordinary work meeting. As dusk turned into night, I watched as Lena and Roy emerged from the nearby cafe, deep in conversation. Their body language was too intimate for mere colleagues. They laughed together, their shoulders brushing in a way that spoke of more than just friendship. The sight was almost too painful to bear. They ended the evening with a lingering hug, and I could see the way Roy's hand lingered on Lena's back, a gesture that seemed too personal. I returned home, grappling with what I had just witnessed. Lena's claims of work commitments now seemed like a poorly constructed cover-up. The facade she had been maintaining was crumbling before my eyes. The confrontation that had seemed like an emotional outburst now needed to be carefully planned. I resolved to collect more evidence, to be certain of the affair before making any move. My mind was already racing with thoughts of how I would handle the situation. I couldn't simply accuse her based on what I had seen in the messages. I needed to be methodical, to gather proof that left no room for doubt. In the days following my unsettling discovery, I became a silent observer of Lena's routine. I took meticulous notes on her late nights, her increasing preoccupation with work, and her phone usage. I installed a discreet app on her phone that allowed me to monitor her messages and call logs, hoping to find more incriminating evidence. My efforts paid off when I stumbled upon a series of texts between Lena and Roy, their conversations increasingly flirtatious. They discussed private meetings, hinted at shared secrets, and exchanged personal jokes that made it clear their relationship went beyond mere colleagues. One afternoon, Lena was out running errands, giving me an opportunity to dig deeper. I decided to follow her, hoping to catch them together. I trailed behind her as she drove to a small, upscale cafe on the opposite side of the island. The place was cozy, with a secluded outdoor seating area. I parked my car a distance away, watching as Lena and Roy arrived, greeted each other with an embrace, and settled into a private corner. They seemed to be in their own little world, completely absorbed in each other. I could see them laughing, sharing intimate glances, and holding hands across the table. My chest tightened with every passing moment. At one point, Roy leaned in close, and I saw them share a brief, but unmistakable, kiss. My heart pounded in my chest, the confirmation of my suspicions hitting me like a ton of bricks. I felt a wave of anger and sadness wash over me, knowing that my wife had betrayed me in such a blatant way. I spent the rest of the day grappling with what I had seen. The betrayal was clear, but I still needed to be strategic. I needed to plan my next steps carefully, ensuring that I had all the evidence needed to confront Lena and deal with the situation in a manner that left no room for her to deny the affair. Days turned into weeks, and the emotional weight of my discovery grew heavier. I had gathered sufficient evidence, texts, photos, and videos capturing Lena's clandestine meetings with Roy. Each piece of evidence only confirmed the depth of her betrayal, making it harder to maintain any semblance of normalcy in our interactions. One evening, I decided it was time to confront Lena. I had planned it meticulously, knowing that the confrontation needed to be direct and unequivocal. As she walked in from work, I was waiting for her in the living room, the evidence laid out on the coffee table before me. "Lena, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me with a hint of surprise, but I could see the nervousness in her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone defensive. "I've been doing some checking," I began, picking up the phone and showing her the incriminating messages and photos. "I know about the affair. I've seen everything." Her face went pale, and she staggered back, almost as if the evidence had physically struck her. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the quiet hum of the ceiling fan. "Lena, how could you do this?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay calm. "We've been together for years. I trusted you." She finally found her voice, though it was shaky. "Alex, I didn't mean for this to happen. It just happened. I didn't know how to stop it." I could barely contain my anger. "So, what now? Do you expect me to just forget about this and move on? After everything we've built together?" "I'm sorry," she repeated, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to hurt you." The confrontation was a painful process, with Lena's apologies and explanations failing to alleviate the hurt. I was left with a sense of betrayal that went beyond the immediate pain. I knew that moving forward, I needed to decide how to address this situation in a way that would bring closure, even if it meant facing the difficult task of revenge and resolution. After the confrontation, I was left with a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, and a burning desire for justice. Lena's apologies felt hollow, and I knew I couldn't simply let the situation pass without ensuring I had every detail accounted for. If I was going to confront Roy and address the betrayal publicly, I needed more than just the initial evidence. I began by diving deeper into Lena's interactions with Roy. I reviewed all the messages and phone logs, meticulously documenting their communication patterns and the frequency of their meetings. I noticed that their conversations had become increasingly intimate and secretive over the past few months. I decided to confront Roy directly, but I needed to be prepared. I gathered all the evidence I had collected: texts, photos, and videos, ensuring I had a comprehensive record of their affair. My plan was to confront him with undeniable proof, to make it clear that I knew everything and that he would face consequences for his actions. One afternoon, I drove to Roy's workplace, a sleek office building with a modern facade. I waited until he left work, shadowing him discreetly. When he finally emerged, I approached him, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and determination. "Roy," I called out, catching his attention. He turned to face me, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition. "Alex," he said cautiously. "What's going on?" "I need to talk to you," I said firmly. "I have evidence of your affair with Lena. I know everything." Roy's face fell as he processed my words. Alex, I didn't mean for things to get this complicated." "Save it," I interrupted, holding up my phone to show him the evidence. "You need to understand that there are consequences for your actions. You've not only hurt me but you've also betrayed Lena's trust. I'm not letting this go." Roy's demeanor shifted from defensive to resigned. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to understand the gravity of what you've done," I said. "And I want you to stop contacting Lena. This needs to end." Roy nodded, his expression a mix of guilt and defeat. "I understand. I'll stay away from her." With that, I left Roy, feeling a small measure of satisfaction that I had confronted him directly. However, the road to closure was still long. I needed to decide how to handle Lena moving forward, ensuring that the consequences of her actions were clear and that I could finally move on from the pain of betrayal. The days following my confrontation with Roy were a tumultuous blend of anger and contemplation. My mind was fixated on the need for irrefutable proof of Lena's betrayal before proceeding with any drastic measures. I had already gathered substantial evidence, but I wanted to ensure I had everything needed to present a full, unassailable case. I began by scrutinizing Lena's daily routine with increased vigilance. I noted every time she left the house, every text message she received, and every phone call she made. Her behavior was becoming increasingly erratic, which only fueled my suspicions further. One morning, I decided to follow Lena again, hoping to catch her and Roy in another compromising situation. This time, I was more prepared. I equipped myself with a high-quality camera and positioned myself in a discreet location near the cafe where they had previously met. As I waited, I reviewed the evidence I had already collected. The messages between Lena and Roy were explicit, detailing their meetings and intimate conversations. It was clear their relationship had crossed the line into something more serious than I initially thought. After a few hours of waiting, Lena's car pulled up to the cafe. I quickly set up my camera, making sure to keep a safe distance. Lena and Roy arrived together, looking comfortable and at ease with each other. They exchanged a warm hug and sat down at their usual secluded table. I focused the camera on them, capturing every interaction. They talked animatedly, leaning in close, their body language betraying a familiarity that went beyond mere friendship. At one point, Lena rested her hand on Roy's arm, a gesture of affection that stung to witness. The conversation turned more intimate as they shared a private joke, their laughter blending into the background noise of the cafe. I zoomed in on their faces, making sure to document their expressions and the close proximity they maintained. It was clear they were involved in a serious affair, not just a fleeting fling. I spent the next few hours collecting as much footage as possible. I wanted to be certain that I had enough evidence to not only confront Lena but also to ensure that my plan for public exposure would be effective. When I finally left the cafe, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The evidence was compelling, and I had ensured that there was no doubt about Lena and Roy's involvement. Back home, I reviewed the footage and made copies of all the documents, ensuring that I had everything in order for the confrontation. My next step was to finalize my plan for exposing Lena and Roy publicly. It was crucial that the exposure was done in a way that left no room for denial or escape. The days leading up to the public exposure were filled with meticulous planning. I needed the event to be perfectly orchestrated, ensuring that Lena and Roy's affair was exposed in the most dramatic and impactful way possible. I decided to use the island's annual charity gala as the stage for the reveal. It was a high-profile event attended by many of Lena's colleagues, friends, and community members. The gala was the perfect setting for a dramatic unveiling of the truth. I began by coordinating with a few trusted contacts to help me with the logistics. I arranged for a special presentation to be part of the evening's program, under the guise of celebrating Lena's achievements. It would be a surprise reveal, and I made sure to keep it discreet, only informing those directly involved. My plan was to use a projector and screen to display the evidence I had gathered. I would prepare a slideshow that included key excerpts from the messages, photos, and videos of Lena and Roy's meetings. I wanted to ensure that the presentation was clear and undeniable, leaving no room for Lena or Roy to explain away their actions. I also arranged for a few trusted friends to be present at the gala, ensuring that they would be able to witness the exposure and support me through the ordeal. Their presence would also help ensure that the event went off smoothly and that there would be witnesses to the unfolding drama. In the days leading up to the gala, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The plan was risky, and there were moments when I questioned whether it was the right course of action. However, the more I considered the betrayal and the impact it had on my life, the more I felt that exposing Lena and Roy publicly was necessary for closure. I spent the final days before the gala rehearsing my presentation, making sure that everything was in place. I wanted the exposure to be a powerful statement, one that would make it clear that their actions had consequences. It was a hard decision, but I was determined to see it through. The night of the charity gala arrived, and the island's grand ballroom was abuzz with excitement. The venue was beautifully decorated, with elegant tables and glimmering lights creating a festive atmosphere. Lena had been busy preparing for the event, and I could see the pride in her eyes as she spoke about the evening's program. As the evening progressed, I maintained a calm exterior, my heart pounding with every passing minute. The moment of truth was drawing near. The gala had a packed schedule, with various performances and speeches planned throughout the night. When it was time for the special presentation, I took the stage with a composed demeanor. I introduced the segment under the pretense of celebrating Lena's career achievements. The audience, including many of Lena's colleagues and friends, were eager to see what was in store. I signaled to my contact, who started the projector. The screen lit up with the first slide, which seemed innocuous at first, a congratulatory message for Lena's work. However, as the slides progressed, the tone shifted dramatically. The first slide displayed excerpts from the incriminating messages between Lena and Roy. Gasps filled the room as the audience read the explicit exchanges. I watched as Lena's face turned from confusion to horror, her hand gripping the edge of her chair as she realized what was happening. The slideshow continued, showcasing photos and videos of Lena and Roy together. The intimate nature of their interactions was undeniable, and the room was filled with a collective sense of shock and disbelief. I could see some of Lena's colleagues exchanging glances, their expressions a mix of pity and judgment. Lena attempted to stand up, but the audience's attention was riveted on the screen. Her attempts to explain or defend herself were drowned out by the murmurs and gasps of those present. Roy, who had been seated in the back, attempted to slip away, but his presence had already been noted. As the final slide appeared, which featured a video clip of Lena and Roy together, the room fell silent. The evidence was overwhelming, and there was no escaping the truth. Lena's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of shame and pleading. I held my ground, my resolve unshaken. The presentation ended, and I walked off the stage, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow. The damage was done, and the public exposure had achieved its purpose. Lena and Roy's affair was now a matter of public record, and their reputations would be forever altered. In the days following the gala, the fallout from the public exposure was swift and intense. Lena and Roy were the subjects of intense scrutiny and gossip, their private lives laid bare for everyone to see. The once close-knit community was now divided, with opinions ranging from sympathy to outright condemnation. Lena was devastated. She withdrew from social circles, avoiding contact with friends and colleagues. The shame of the public exposure had taken a toll on her, and she struggled to come to terms with the reality of her actions. I could see the emotional impact on her, but I remained resolute in my decision to pursue closure. Roy, on the other hand, disappeared from the island. His reputation was in tatters, and he left abruptly, avoiding any further confrontation. I heard through the grapevine that he had been forced to resign from his position and had left town under a cloud of disgrace. I spent the following weeks sorting through the remnants of my life with Lena. The betrayal had left scars that would take time to heal. I focused on reclaiming my own sense of normalcy and moving forward. The process of dealing with Lena's fallout was difficult, but I remained committed to ensuring that the consequences of her actions were clear and unavoidable. Despite the turmoil, I found solace in the support of friends and family. Their understanding and empathy provided a much-needed buffer against the emotional strain. The process of rebuilding and healing began, albeit slowly. I also sought legal advice regarding the next steps in our relationship. The exposure had made it clear that moving forward required a clear resolution. I began the process of filing for divorce, ensuring that all necessary legal actions were taken to formalize the end of our marriage. As the dust settled from the public exposure and the subsequent fallout, I found myself grappling with the next steps in my life. The betrayal had left a deep mark, and the process of rebuilding was far from easy. But with each passing day, I began to regain a sense of normalcy and direction. The divorce proceedings were a necessary but painful process. Lena and I had to address various legal and financial matters, but the emotional distance between us made the process more manageable. The clarity of the situation allowed me to focus on moving forward without the constant cloud of uncertainty. I took time to reflect on the lessons learned from the ordeal. While the experience had been devastating, it had also given me a clearer understanding of my own resilience and strength. I was determined to use this experience as a catalyst for personal growth and renewal. In the months that followed, I began to explore new opportunities and interests. The island, once a symbol of betrayal and pain, started to feel like a place of potential and new beginnings. I immersed myself in activities that brought me joy and fulfillment, seeking to rebuild my life on my own terms. I also reconnected with old friends and made new ones, finding support and companionship in unexpected places. The sense of community and belonging was a valuable counterbalance to the solitude I had experienced during the betrayal. As I looked ahead, I realized that while the past could not be changed, the future was full of possibilities. The journey had been difficult, but it had also paved the way for a new chapter in my life. I embraced the opportunity to start afresh, carrying forward the lessons learned and the strength gained from overcoming the challenges. The path forward was not without its hurdles, but I faced them with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The betrayal, though painful, had ultimately led me to a place of self-discovery and growth. And as I moved forward, I did so with the knowledge that I had the strength to face whatever came next. The weeks following the public exposure were marked by a whirlwind of emotions. Lena and I had limited contact, mainly through legal channels. I had received a few messages from her, but I had avoided direct communication as much as possible. The exposure had severed any remaining threads of our relationship, but it was clear that some form of closure was still necessary. One afternoon, I received a call from Lena, asking to meet in person. The request was unexpected, but I agreed, knowing that we needed to address the situation face to face. We decided to meet at a quiet cafe, a place that had once been a favorite of ours. The familiarity of the setting contrasted sharply with the tension that loomed over our meeting. When I arrived, Lena was already seated at a corner table, her demeanor subdued. She looked tired and worn, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman I once knew. As I approached, she looked up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of regret and resignation. "Alex," she said softly, standing to greet me. Her voice carried a tone of sorrow, and I could see the emotional strain etched on her face. "Lena," I replied, taking a seat opposite her. I felt a surge of anger and sadness, but I maintained a calm exterior. "What did you want to talk about?" "I wanted to apologize," Lena began, her voice trembling. "I know that nothing I say can undo what's happened, but I need you to know how deeply sorry I am." I listened, my expression neutral. "You're right, nothing can change the past. But I need to hear what you have to say." Lena took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "I never intended for things to get so out of hand. Roy and it just happened, and I didn't realize the extent of the damage until it was too late. I made a terrible mistake, and I'm truly sorry." Her apology seemed sincere, but the hurt and betrayal I felt were too deep for words. "Lena, I appreciate your apology, but the damage is done. The trust we had is shattered beyond repair." "I understand," she said quietly. "I've been trying to come to terms with my actions and the impact they've had on you. I know I've lost everything that mattered to me, and I regret it more than I can express." There was a long pause as I processed her words. "What are you planning to do now?" "I'm not sure," Lena admitted. "I've been trying to figure out what comes next. I know I need to make changes in my life, but I'm still processing everything." Our conversation continued for a while longer, with Lena expressing her regrets and attempting to explain her actions. Despite her attempts to make amends, the pain of betrayal was too fresh for any real reconciliation. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of closure, knowing that we had addressed the situation directly. But I also knew that moving on was the only viable path forward. The aftermath of the public exposure continued to ripple through the island community. Lena's fall from grace had been swift and brutal, and the gossip and speculation that followed were intense. The scandal had not only affected Lena and Roy but had also left a mark on everyone connected to them. Friends and acquaintances reached out to me, offering their support and sympathy. Some were genuinely concerned, while others seemed more interested in discussing the details of the affair. Mark had always been a loyal friend, and his visit was a much-needed reminder of the importance of maintaining strong relationships. "Hey, Alex," Mark greeted me warmly as he entered my home. "I've been hearing about everything that happened. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied, offering him a seat. "It's been a challenging time, but I'm focusing on moving forward." Mark nodded sympathetically. "I can't imagine what you've been through. If there's anything you need or if you just want to talk, I'm here for you." We spent the afternoon catching up and discussing the impact of the scandal. Mark's support was a source of solace, and our conversation helped to put things into perspective. The public exposure had been painful, but it had also provided an opportunity to reconnect with those who mattered most. As the days turned into weeks, the initial shock of the scandal began to fade. Lena and Roy had retreated from the public eye, and the island community gradually moved on. The intense scrutiny that had surrounded the affair was replaced by a quieter, more reflective atmosphere. I continued to focus on my own path, determined to use the experience as a catalyst for personal growth. The public exposure had been a painful chapter, but it had also opened the door to new opportunities and possibilities. As the dust settled from the scandal and life began to return to a semblance of normalcy, I found myself at a crossroads. The experience had been a trial, but it had also provided a unique opportunity for growth and self-discovery. With the divorce proceedings completed and the public exposure behind me, I focused on rebuilding my life and embracing new opportunities. The island, once a symbol of betrayal and pain, had become a place of renewal and possibility. I decided to take on a new project, one that had long been a dream of mine. I started working on a community initiative aimed at improving local environmental conservation. The project was a way to channel my energy into something positive and to contribute to the island's well-being. One evening, I attended a meeting with local community members to discuss the initiative. The turnout was encouraging, and the enthusiasm from participants was a welcome sign of support. "Thank you all for coming," I said to the group as I began the meeting. "I'm excited about the potential of this project and the positive impact it can have on our island." The discussion that followed was lively and constructive. We brainstormed ideas for conservation efforts, discussed potential partnerships, and planned upcoming events. The energy in the room was infectious, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose as we worked together towards a common goal. In addition to the community project, I also began to explore new personal interests. I took up hiking and photography, finding solace in the island's natural beauty. The activities provided a welcome distraction and helped me to reconnect with the things I enjoyed. As I moved forward, I also made a conscious effort to reconnect with old friends and build new relationships. The support I had received from friends and family was invaluable, and I wanted to nurture those connections as I embraced this new chapter of my life. The path forward was not without its challenges, but I faced them with a renewed sense of determination and resilience. The betrayal and scandal had been difficult to endure, but they had also paved the way for personal growth and new beginnings. Looking ahead, I was optimistic about the future. The experience had taught me valuable lessons about strength, forgiveness, and the importance of moving forward. As I continued to rebuild my life, I did so with a sense of hope and excitement for the possibilities that lay ahead. The weeks that followed Lena's departure were a period of intense reflection and adjustment. I focused on the community project, which was progressing well, but the emotional impact of the betrayal still lingered. The quiet moments were the hardest, where the weight of the past settled heavily on my shoulders. One evening, as I was organizing files for the project, I received an unexpected phone call from an old friend of mine, Roger. Roger had been out of touch for some time, and I was surprised to hear from him. "Alex, it's Roger," he said, his voice carrying a tone of urgency. "I heard about everything that happened with Lena and wanted to check in. Can we meet up?" I agreed, and we arranged to meet at a local bar later that week. I was curious about what Roger had to say and welcomed the opportunity to talk to someone who knew me well. When we met, Roger looked concerned but also determined. Alex, I've been following the news and heard about the exposure. I'm really sorry for what you've been through. Thanks, Roger, I said, taking a seat at a quiet corner table. It's been a tough time, but I'm managing. Roger took a deep breath before continuing. I've been meaning to talk to you about something. I have a friend who's a private investigator. I know you've handled things yourself so far, but if you want, he might be able to help with any lingering questions or concerns. I was taken aback by his offer. What do you mean? I thought I had everything sorted out. Roger nodded. You might have. And I immediately felt that he was thorough and dedicated to uncovering the truth. When we met, Jake reviewed the evidence I had collected and listened to my account of the situation. I appreciate you providing all this information, he said, examining the documents and photos. I'll need some time to go over everything, but I'll let you know if I find anything new. Over the next few days, I waited anxiously for Jake's findings. The possibility of uncovering additional details about Lena and Roy's affair was unsettling. But I needed to be certain that I had the full picture. Jake's expertise brought a sense of reassurance, and I hoped it would provide the closure I sought. A week later, I met with Jake in a quiet, understated office, the kind of place where serious conversations could unfold without interruptions. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. The investigative work Jake had undertaken was thorough, and I was eager to see if it would provide any new insights or closure. Alex, Jake began, I've gone through all the evidence you provided and conducted some additional inquiries. I have a few things to share. I was already on edge, my mind racing through all the possible scenarios. I nodded, signaling him to proceed. Jake continued, first, let's confirm the timeline. From the data I've analyzed, it aligns well with what you already knew. Lena and Roy's affair was ongoing for several months, but there are a few new details that might interest you. He spread out several documents and photos on the table between us. Among them were new communications between Lena and Roy that I hadn't previously seen. The texts were filled with coded references and plans that indicated a level of intimacy and conspiracy I hadn't fully grasped before. Here, Jake pointed to a series of emails. These messages were sent in the weeks leading up to your discovery. They discuss plans for a future together and include details about financial arrangements and travel. I examined the documents closely, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. The emails spoke of shared dreams and future plans, visions that excluded me entirely. Lena and Roy had been meticulously planning their exit, which made the betrayal even more profound. There's more, Jake said, shifting to a new set of records. I dug into Lena's financial transactions. It appears that she was funneling money into a joint account with Roy. This account was set up specifically for their future plans. I reviewed the financial records, noting the large deposits and withdrawals that aligned with their intended escape. They had been preparing to leave the island together, investing in a new life far from the ruins of their old one. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow. They had not only betrayed me emotionally but had also been financially planning to sever their ties to our life together. Jake then handed me a set of photographs showing Lena and Roy at various locations. These were taken during their secret meetings. The photos were collected from surveillance cameras around the island. They paint a clear picture of their frequent, clandestine encounters. The images were hard to look at, Lena and Roy smiling and enjoying their time together while I was left in the dark. It was a stark contrast to the life we once had, and the disparity was painful. There's also something else, Jake said, his tone becoming more serious. I found evidence suggesting that Lena and Roy were planning to leave the island within the next few months. They had made significant travel arrangements and had even begun looking at properties in another country. I felt a surge of anger mixed with a profound sense of betrayal. The thought that Lena had been so thoroughly invested in leaving me behind was almost unbearable. The emotional impact of this new revelation was overwhelming, and I struggled to maintain my composure. Jake continued, I've compiled all this information into a comprehensive report for you. It details every finding and provides context to each piece of evidence. You'll find that the depth of their planning was extensive. I accepted the report, flipping through its pages with a mix of dread and determination. Each detail painted a more vivid picture of the betrayal that had rocked my world. The thoroughness of the investigation left little room for doubt. Lena and Roy had been deeply committed to their escape plan. I appreciate your hard work, Jake, I said, my voice strained but sincere. This confirms what I suspected but couldn't fully grasp. It's hard to accept, but it's important to have the complete picture. Jake nodded understandingly. If there's anything else you need or if you have further questions, don't hesitate to contact me. I'm here to help. As Jake left, I sat in the office, absorbing the weight of the final revelations. The knowledge that Lena and Roy had been planning such an elaborate escape made the betrayal feel even more personal and deep. The hurt was palpable, but there was also a sense of closure now that I had a complete understanding of their actions. In the days that followed, I continued to process the new information. The full extent of Lena and Roy's plans was a stark reminder of their disregard for our life together. However, this clarity allowed me to finally close that painful chapter and focus on my own future. I immersed myself further in my community project, finding solace in the constructive work and the positive impact it was having. The project became a symbol of my resilience and a beacon of hope for what lay ahead. Reconnecting with old friends and building new relationships provided additional support and perspective. The people around me offered a network of care and encouragement, helping me navigate the aftermath of the betrayal. Looking ahead, I embraced the opportunity to rebuild my life on my own terms. The experience had been a rigorous test of endurance, but it had also been a profound lesson in strength and personal growth. As I moved forward, I did so with a renewed sense of purpose and a commitment to making the most of the new opportunities that lay before me. The journey had been arduous, but it had ultimately led me to a place of self-discovery and new beginnings. With the weight of the past behind me, I was ready to face the future with hope and optimism, knowing that I had the strength to overcome any challenges that came my way.